Hey neighbor, welcome back to 7 on Sunday. I've always been fascinated by the album creation process, whether that's watching documentary footage of a band recording, or just getting updates directly from the artist as they allow us into their world. Most of these albums make it to the finish line, at least the ones the general public have been told were coming, but today we're scratching a very specific itch by exploring 7 mysterious records that were never completed, even though time was spent announcing, recording, or trying to nail down the concept. Keep in mind that with so many abandoned albums sitting vacant on the Sonic Highway, I know I could have reached for even more lost records, and if this video does well, I will definitely make a part 2. Also, the album covers I'm putting on screen are mostly unofficial fan-made art. Just think of it like a representation for what almost was. This was a fun rabbit hole to get lost in, so if you walk away entertained or knowing something that you didn't know before, please take a quick second to hit the like button, join the conversation in the comments below, and subscribe for more music content just like this.
So fake your death, or it's your blame, and leave the lights on when you stay.
My Chemical Romance fell apart when the pressures of touring and recording became way too much for them to handle mentally. I love this band with my entire heart, so of course I felt devastated by their breakup announcement in 2013, and obviously they since returned in 2019, but at the time, I was left with the same questions everyone else had. Weren't you guys just telling us how you built a studio for MCR5? Wasn't Gerard Way promising a wicked dark concept album with cutting edge ambition?
When's the album come out?
We don't know yet, but this one is going rather quickly, and I'm very excited about that. And it's very dark so far, but I really like it.
Are you gonna dress up for this one, or are you gonna be you?
This one, yeah, this one has, because the last one we didn't dress up. This one I've got something worked out that's really awesome.
Gerard Way talked about the ill-fated 5th album multiple times, but official sources outside of the ones caught on video are hard to come by. But judging based on what we do know from the band and the people close to them, the Paper Kingdom was set to be a return to darkness, a la the Black Parade, after Danger Days failed to connect on the same commercial level.
And I started to work on a record that was a concept record about a group of parents in a support group because they all lost their children in a horrible way. And that was supposed to be the last record.
That's a bombshell right there. They were ready to pull the plug with one final album, but the plug pulled itself before they could even get there. It sucks, and I can't even imagine the pressure they felt to follow up to the heights they'd reached with The Black Parade and 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, but I'd trade my kidney to hear the full-length Paper Kingdom as it was intended. While various producers and collaborators have commented on how much progress was actually made, I don't believe more than 6 songs were ever demoed, with Fake Your Death from the Greatest Hits collection being the only track they finished in full. Fans have tried to make it seem like there's a lot more than they're letting on, and that this secret masterpiece is somewhere out there in full, but I just don't see that happening, although if it is happening, my DMs are open, and I'm not gonna tell a soul. Although, if My Chemical Romance slide into my DMs, then I think my soul will be long gone because it will have left my body.
This ain't a hobby, yeah, we do this every day. Bring a bottle and your best friend. It's an open invitation. Tell me now, you wanna come to my party?
Charli XCX is one of the most intriguing pop artists of the 21st century, mainly because I don't fully understand her. But you keep coming back to see what's next, and for a long time, fans held out hope that her 3rd album would be what they've unofficially dubbed XCX World. True Romance dropped in 2013, and suddenly witch hop was a term in every pop stand's vocabulary. Sucker comes the next year, and hold up, now everyone's into rock and power pop? Clearly Charli's the one holding the crystal ball, leading to even more excitement when the singles like Boys and After the After Party started trickling out from what was supposed to be her 3rd full-length. Charli often posted on socials that she was either in the studio or else writing all the time for this untitled album, with fans speculating pretty hard that 2016 was absolutely the year of XCX World. And I get why they felt that way too. After the After Party was out, it was supposed to be the lead single, but then the L word struck.
Lesbians?
No, the other L word. Leaks. Charli often joked about leaking her own music, given that she's not exactly an album-first artist, but still, the leaks that happened throughout 2016 and 17 were not her doing. A promised release date that she gave Zane Lowe for May 2017 came and went without much notice, but she did quietly confirm that people were leaking her music and that she'd have to re-record everything. Having heard some of the leaked compilations fans have put up on YouTube, as seemingly always for me with Charli XCX, it sounded like a mixed bag, but also fun at the same time. Come to My Party was a hella good time, and it's a damn shame that some of those tracks never got an official push. This was supposed to be Charli's party, but instead, the leakers crashed it and took control to the point where the British singer must have just thought, fuck it, I'll do some mixtapes instead, because that's exactly what she did, until scrapping the album entirely, starting over, and crafting what we know as the 2019 LP Charli. Something is off. I smell thievery in the air, and also cigarettes. And someone's definitely smoking. Can we open a window?
This bitch.
Green Day released one of the most successful albums of the 2000s, An American Idiot, a soaring rock opera that covered totally new ground for the punk band, but that wasn't what they had originally at all, since after the criminally underrated Warning fizzled out, the trio had it in their heads that back to basics punk was the way to go. Billy Joe Armstrong seemed excited out of the gate when asked about the progress for their loud and fast punk album Cigarettes and Valentines, but something really weird happened a few years into the progress of this potential 7th album. Green Day claimed the master recordings were stolen right out from under them, and that all of the album's progress was lost. If true, that's devastating, but considering they told us the masters were stolen, why would bassist Mike Dirnt be telling the media in 2016 that they were using the master tapes for this album as an idea board for the new material? That's a pretty major clue that even though maybe the masters were stolen, more copies existed even before the originals supposedly made their way back home. What it really boiled down to was complacency, and it seemed like Green Day weren't ignited by what they were writing, so they tossed it on the back burner in favor of something that actually challenged and expanded the band. At this point, all we knowingly have from this project is a live version of the title track Cigarettes and Valentines, and you can tell they had fun with that one. I do too, it's a slapper, but it also feels more shallow when stacked against the depth of the 2 concept albums that took its place instead. Green Day themselves said it best, maybe this really was a blessing in disguise, because had it not been stolen, we might not have American Idiot.
As the fetish blessed with an operatic skeleton. And as the stars watch me descend, I crack the family tree and jumped off all of the branches.
Panic at the Disco were popular from day one as an extremely young band, signed by Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy without playing a single show, gracing the cover of Rolling Stone before Pete's own band. Suffice it to say, major label backing, non-stop touring, the pressure's on, and album 2 better be huge. They ramped up the Fever tour in late 2006 before taking to the mountains of Nevada early the next year to start the sessions for what most fans call the Cabin album, officially called Cricket and Clover by multiple members at that time. If you paid attention to the often bizarre lyrics of their debut, then you know Ryan Ross was the Chuck Palahniuk-obsessed mastermind that baked pop culture references into every corner of the record, but that wasn't what they wanted for LP2. Just listen to this clip from an interview in 2007.
Just wanted to do something that you wouldn't be able to place in a certain time period, and it's been really challenging writing lyrics for something like that when our last record had so many references to pop culture. It's kind of just like a love story.
Honestly, that sounds like it would have been fantastic. Ross wanted it to play out like a timeless love story where each song change would be like flipping to the next chapter in a book. And with titles teased sounding like Velveteen, Porridge, It's True Love, and There Once Was a Man from Nantucket, it seems as though a rather vintage mood would have taken the reins all throughout. This progress only lasted a few weeks, as Panic quickly got tired of being secluded in a cabin, so they returned to the big city briefly before returning that summer to try and pick it back up, only to stall out completely and abandon the album Cricket and Clover to instead start from scratch, eventually resulting in Pretty Odd a year later. We all know that album to have a very retro presence, but its lyrics cast a much wider net thanks to the involvement of Brendan Urie, whose name I can't believe I haven't said out loud up until this point, but hey, that just shows you how much Ryan ran the show when he was there. Pretty much every member has acknowledged that decent quality demos exist for a good chunk of songs, but it's ex-bassist John Walker that knows how to get the crowd roaring. The truth is out there, people. For fuck's sake, Folkin' Around was from the Cabin album and it got rewritten to fit Pretty Odd, and Nearly Witches, you've heard the demo version, I'm sure, and the finalized version made it to Vices and Virtues years after Ryan Ross left the band. I can't believe this hasn't leaked after all these years, but out of all the bands on the list, I'd say this is probably the most confident I feel in at least one or two more songs finding their way out to our eardrums. Rock operas can be nearly impossible to get right. Just ask Rivers Cuomo, since his potential game-changer Songs from the Black Hole was lost in space, uncompleted, and never officially released. Weezer found themselves unsure of what to do with the certified platinum success of their debut album, but instead of leaning further into pop music, their frontman crawled back into seclusion to write a space-themed rock opera in which he would play the parts of nearly every character, including pitch-shifting his voice to fill the role of any female character. It was an ambitious plan, maybe a little too ambitious, but Rivers dug his heels in to write and demo all of the madness, even cementing 2 versions of the planned track list in early 1995. However, the Weezer ringleader took some time off for a risky surgery that involved correcting the uneven length of his legs, which had bothered him since childhood. The surgery sidelined Rivers for most of the year, but he did manage the pain well enough to get back in the studio with the rest of the band to try and record more finalized versions of what was set to be their sophomore album. According to their longtime archivist Carl Koch, the songs were much less theatrical than the demos, toning it down to the point that the rest of Weezer were very confused on the overall musical direction. This confusion led Rivers to temporarily abandon Songs from the Black Hole in favor of instead enrolling at Harvard University.
I understand Rivers better than he understands himself.
After some devastating periods of isolation at Harvard, Rivers went back to work on what he initially thought would be Songs from the Black Hole in early '96. But after recording some of the tentative tracks for the album, he changed his mind again and decided to take Weezer in a very different direction. That change resulted in Pinkerton, a raw power pop emo masterpiece that I love even more than the beloved Blue album. No Other One, Tired of Sex, and Get You were all intended for Black Hole but carried over to Pinkerton in rewritten fashion, which makes those songs that much more special, knowing that it took a lot to get them recorded. Most of the other songs from the original sessions have either been released through the leaks of the demo or the official Alone album series Rivers put out in the late 2000s, but the rock opera Songs from the Black Hole was never finished, with self-doubt consuming the frontman and leaving what could have been one of the most gloriously celebratory, geeky albums ever made a wishlist item for every long-suffering Weezer fan. How could anyone possibly follow up The Dark Side of the Moon? It's hands down one of the most iconic albums ever made, so I think it's safe to say that the experimental prog rock band Pink Floyd were probably asking themselves the exact same question. The English group decided to attempt an idea they first had in 1969, long before Dark Side of the Moon, a project called Household Objects. It's kinda in the name, since they'd be playing almost everything on the record with rubber bands, newspapers, wine glasses, or pretty much anything else that you could find in a home that would mimic the sound of an instrument. What an amazing, bold idea that only Pink Floyd could have pulled off at that time. Think about how much harder it was to do with that limited technology. Sampling was literally splicing together pieces of tape and putting them back together and making wine glasses sound like some sort of bizarro synth. That was only achievable by fidgeting with knobs and amplifiers to the point of total exhaustion. Unfortunately for us, we're never gonna see a finished product because they only ever finished a couple of the tracks, and the ones that do exist, the ones that we can listen to now, Those finally came out in 2011 on a Dark Side reissue. Roger Waters has been quoted as saying that it seemed like a good idea at the time, and listen, I'm ecstatic that we have what we have and that the wine glasses and a few other background noises made their way onto the next album, Wish You Were Here, but damn, this was a good idea then, it's a good idea now, and I'm sure millions of fans would agree. While the music of Deftones has always been relatively dark with an underlying sense of twisted beauty, the lights went down to nothing more than a flicker as the bandmates grew resentful of each other in the 2000s. The self-titled era was plagued with infighting, and Saturday Night Wrist, Jesus Christ, they were just emailing their parts to each other for recording that album, which is a massive red flag for the band's chemistry. Insanely enough, those records are still killer with very little that I find subpar. But if we ever do get what was supposed to come next, I think I'd lose my mind, and that's why Eros is all the way up at number 1, that and the fact that its release is still technically possible. The Eros sessions began as a return to being a band, letting go of the bad blood and just making something bulletproof. The creative sparks were flying as Deftones took time in the studio to just jam the hell out as a 5-piece, brainstorming ideas and letting go of distractions, even on tour, just so they can make the best music possible. January 2008 saw them officially unveiling the title, with drummer Abe Cunningham pointing out that the title was an inside joke between the members. You have to keep in mind that this album was coming together very, very fast, and Deftones actually seemed like they were friends again. It was the best that they'd felt since White Pony 8 years before, and they even ran a blog dedicated to just keeping fans in the loop of the recording process because they were so excited about the new music. Tragedy struck about halfway through the new album's completion, as their longtime bassist Chi Chang was involved in a serious car crash on the way home from his brother's memorial service. He barely survived after being ejected through the windshield, and the remainder of his life was spent in a semi-conscious coma-like state, which of course stopped Deftones right in their tracks for the progress of Eros. Chi's health of course came first, and various fundraising efforts and benefit concerts took place over the next 5 years, as the band ended up scrapping what they would call a dark album with Diamond Eyes, which they said helped them channel a lot more positive energy at a time when they really, really needed it. Their bassist finally lost his battle, even after showing some signs of improvement, passing away on April 13th, 2013. Eros sits incomplete, with Chino estimating that 80% of the instruments were finished and roughly half of his vocals were recorded, including the ones he'd laid down the night that Chi was involved in his terrible accident. All we know is that 6 tracks were definitely all but completed, at least in demo form, but only 1 track, Smile, has actually been mixed, mastered, and released to the public. As recently as the early 2020s, Abe and Chino have both shown interest and hesitation in finishing the project as a whole. It's very emotional to revisit, I'm sure, but maybe they could use this as a way to say a final goodbye to their friend who did play on this material. So whether this ends up surfacing as an EP, an album, or not at all, just be grateful Deftones kept going and pushed through an incredibly trying time that would have ripped most bands apart at the seams. You made it to the end of the video! Kudos, and thank you for watching, liking, sharing, all that good stuff you do that helps me keep making this show. That support truly does go a long way. You can check out the videos on screen now if you like the one that you just saw. Consider supporting my content on Patreon at the top link in the description or the link on screen, and also tap that bell so you get notified when I post new content right here on ARTV.